everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our boss fight breakdown series. We're continuing through the story quest and taking a closer look at each of the boss battles as they appear, and today we will be highlighting another two bosses. Now, before we continue too far into the sequence, make sure that you take the time to check and see if you're subscribed to the channel, as the subscription is free and easy, and I bring content to you on a daily basis. And if you found this video helpful, please feel free to leave a like. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the boss fights of today's video. Now, the first fight that we'll be highlighting is the fight against Mysterio, and it does not start off with Mysterio himself. The first two stages of this fight involve confrontations with a couple of the protagonists that you can eventually add to your team, being Miss Marvel, Spider-Gwen, and Miles Morales. Now, the two segments that this fight is broken down into rely around the health bars that you can see at the top, and these characters are widely using slight variations on regular abilities that they have as playable characters. Now, the first stage of this fight isn't too difficult, and you can quite easily transition through it, after which a cutscene will play, and we will move into the second portion of this fight. Now, this is this portion where you need to wholly deplete out these characters, and they each present a unique challenge. Miles, though he does have some ranged and melee attacks, he does provide to be quite a nuisance with the electrical attacks that he doles out, because it can stagger down different members of your team. Kamala Khan has, or Miss Marvel, has a lot of different attacks that take up large amounts of area, but as long as you stay out of the way, there's not a whole lot that you should need to worry about too much there. And Spider-Gwen is similar to Miles, the big difference being her special attacks don't cause you to stagger as much as Miles does. But as you continue to fight off and fend off these characters here, you will be drawn ever closer to the main confrontation against Mysterio. Now, each time you take out one of these bosses in the second phase, Lockjaw will come in and take them away into a containment area, and that's the last that you really have to deal with or worry about them. Now, here we have just Spider-Gwen left, so we will go ahead and transition over to Wolverine to burst down the last couple of bits of her health, and that will prompt Mysterio to show up, which activates the third and final set of this boss fight. Now, Mysterio doesn't have multiple phases to his fight, because we've already seen two phases primarily, but he does have a couple of attack patterns that he will cycle through. He will primarily focus on attacking into the different characters around you, and that big cyclone attack that he has can prove to be a little problematic. Now, I wanted to get as many of these extreme attacks unloaded onto him as possible, as that just proves to be a general good strategy in terms of taking down these boss fights. And if you are not careful here with these areas where he projects illusions around the battle arena, he will cause the entire arena to swell up with a massive cyclone, and that deals out very significant amounts of damage, especially if you're going through this on the ultimate level like we're showcasing here. Now, Mysterio does have a couple of different attacks that can prove to be quite annoying. There are the green clouds that he puts out, which are similar to the clouds dispersed by the AIM soldiers that are encountered very, very late in the story quest progression. But he also has some darker smoke that will stagger out your movement or allow you to move a lot slower than what you would otherwise expect to. And it can be difficult to make your way around these clouds a little bit, as it does occult your direct line of sight to Mysterio, and just makes him a little bit more difficult to access. And we'll see here we've got a bunch of the shadow clones popped up again. The nice thing is all of the false opponents that you can run into will dissipate with a single attack, but you do want to try and figure out which one he is as quickly as possible, because otherwise that big swirling purple vortex is going to deal massive amounts of damage. And here I switch over to Dr. Doom mainly because I needed a character that had a lot of area of effect attack available to him, as well as MP to just dole out into these opponents here. So as long as you plan your attacks accordingly, you can get through this fight with little to no problems, but the real struggle can be determining where Mysterio has disappeared to when he dupes himself in multiple versions around the arena. But all in all, it's a pretty quick fight, and you shouldn't have too much of difficulty with this fight in its entirety. Now, the second fight that we have to showcase today is the fight against Dr. Octopus, and this is broken down into 2 stages. This first one here, you do have to completely deplete his health bar, and that is fairly straightforward. This is the easier stage of the fight, but then again, most first stages of fights tend to be easier than the follow-up stage. So here, I do prioritize using 2 extreme attacks against the main boss and trying to conserve the extreme attacks from the other team members, as really there's not a whole lot you need to look out for. That charging attack from Dr. Octopus tends to be the most annoying of the attacks that he has at his disposal, but it's really the only one that deals a considerable amount of damage and or knockback in this first phase. And you have to wait for those particle effects to completely dissipate before you can really get away with anything else. Now, we are about to the halfway point, and you've just got to keep an eye out for the different attacks that Dr. Octopus has at his disposal and prioritize getting away from that charge attack for the most part. Now, we almost have him down, so I'm looking to use a couple of ability or synergy attacks to finish this out. And Wolverine with one final adamantium uppercut here, or a couple of his Fury Slashes, should be able to get us into stage 2. Now in stage 2, he runs back out into the elevator that brings you this fight, and you do need to follow him out there in order to trigger the transition to stage 2, which will begin shortly after the gates close here, and he will drop down on top of you and cause you to stagger out right here at the very beginning of the fight. Now this fight is pretty straightforward as well, but it's made increasingly difficult based off of the varying attacks coming from the tentacles here. To stagger him out, you need to attack the different tentacles in the 4 different corners of the elevator, and they will do one of a couple of different attacks. There will be some energy beams that are shot out, there will be some orbs that are shot out across, or sometimes it'll just pound into the ground, and they all have their own variants as to how you can best deal with them. But once you deplete the health on all of the tentacles, you can rush into the center and deal out as much damage as you can. In this instance, I do use all of the extreme attacks at my disposal, which brings him down to about the 30% mark. Now, the difficult portion of this fight is right there. When he revives back up, he does a couple of spinning energy beam attacks from his tentacles to get back up into this position, and the timing on it's very tight and it's very difficult to dodge, so you've got to be very cautious with that. Anytime Dr. Octopus jumps up into the air like that, you can roll around the shockwave attack that's put out by the tentacles, and that will allow you to get away from the stagger effects and circumvent a lot of the damage that could come as a result of those attacks. Now, at this point, we are looking to stagger out that last tentacle there, and you've seen that I was able to roll around that attack. So we will, at this stage, go ahead and get a couple of synergy attacks in, and that will finish out this stage of the fight. So that's where we're going to leave things off for today's video. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to leave a like and leave me a comment letting me know about what fights you're excited to see coming up in this series, or fights that you are struggling with personally. So thanks again for watching, and you have yourself a fantastic rest of your day.